Let's go. Here are threats in puzzle position. Queen takes pawn. Knight takes pawn. Rook takes pawn. Rook takes pawn, check. Here are checks in puzzle position. Rook to b1, check. Rook takes pawn, check. Here is the solution to the puzzle. Rook takes pawn, check. Knight takes rook. Queen to b2, checkmate. Another puzzle. Let us look at threats in puzzle position. Queen takes knight. Queen takes pawn. Queen takes bishop. Queen takes knight, check. Bishop takes pawn. Pawn takes bishop. Checks in this position are: Queen to e8, check. Queen to f5, check. Queen to e6, check. Queen takes knight, check. Bishop to e6, check. The best move in puzzle position is bishop to e6, check. King to d8. Queen to f8, checkmate. Next puzzle, the threats are: Queen takes pawn, check. Queen takes pawn. Queen takes pawn. Knight takes pawn. Knight takes pawn. Let us look at checks in puzzle position. Queen to f7, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Queen to h7, check. Queen to e6, check. Knight to e7, check. Knight to f6, check. The puzzle is solved using knight to e7, check. King to h8. Queen to h7, checkmate. Another puzzle. Here are threats in puzzle position. Rook takes pawn. Pawn takes rook. Checks in this position are: Rook to g7, check. Rook to h5, check. Rook to g6, check. h4, check. Answer to this puzzle is h4, check. King takes pawn. Rook takes pawn, checkmate. Another puzzle. Here are the threats. Rook takes pawn. Queen takes pawn, check. Queen takes pawn. Knight takes rook. Knight takes pawn. The checks are: Queen takes pawn, check. Solution to the puzzle is: Queen takes pawn, check. Rook takes queen. Rook to b8, check. Rook to f8. Rook takes rook, checkmate. One more. Here are the threats. Knight takes pawn. Knight takes knight. The checks are: Queen to h5, check. The puzzle is solved using Queen to h5, check. King to f8. Queen to f7, checkmate. One more. Threats in this position are: Bishop takes knight. Knight takes pawn. Pawn takes pawn. The checks are: Knight to c6, check. The best move in puzzle position is knight to c6, check. Bishop takes knight. Queen to e8, checkmate. Next puzzle. Here are threats in puzzle position. Knight takes pawn. Knight takes pawn. Queen takes pawn. The checks are: Queen to h5, check. Bishop to b5, check. Answer to this puzzle is: Queen to h5, check. King to f8. Queen to f7, checkmate. Let's continue. Let us look at threats in puzzle position. Queen takes pawn. Bishop takes pawn. Here are the checks. Queen to c4, check. Queen to d5, check. Queen to h7, check. Here is the solution to the puzzle. Queen to h7, check. King to f8. Queen to h8, check. King to e7. Knight to d5, checkmate. Next puzzle. Let us look at threats in puzzle position. Knight takes pawn. Bishop takes pawn, check. Bishop takes knight, check. Bishop takes pawn. Let us look at checks in puzzle position. Bishop takes pawn, check. Bishop takes knight, check. Solution to the puzzle is: Bishop takes knight, check. Queen takes bishop. Queen to d1, checkmate. Another one. Let us look at threats in puzzle position. Bishop takes pawn. Queen takes rook. Queen takes knight, check. Queen takes pawn. Checks in puzzle position are: Rook to g4, checkmate. Bishop to e3, check. Queen to h6, check. Queen to h4, check. Queen to h2, check. Queen to g4, checkmate. Queen takes knight, check. Queen to g5, check. Queen to f5, check. Queen to e5, check. The puzzle is solved using Queen to g4, checkmate. Another one. Here are the threats. Queen takes rook. Queen takes pawn, check. Knight takes pawn, check. Knight takes pawn. Checks in puzzle position are: Queen takes pawn, check. Knight takes pawn, check. Knight to g6, check. Here is the solution to the puzzle. Queen takes pawn, check. King to d6. Knight to c4, checkmate. Next puzzle, threats in puzzle position are. Rook takes pawn, check. Bishop takes knight, check. Bishop takes rook. Queen takes pawn. Queen takes bishop, check. Checks in puzzle position are. Rook takes pawn, check. Bishop takes knight, check. Queen to h1, check. Queen to g1, check. Queen takes bishop, check. The puzzle is solved using. Rook takes pawn, check. Bishop takes rook. Queen to f2, checkmate. Let's see the next puzzle. Here are threats in puzzle position. Queen takes pawn. Queen takes pawn. Queen takes pawn. Here are the checks. Queen to d4, check. Rook to g8, check. The puzzle is solved using. Queen to d4, check. Rook to f6. Queen takes rook, checkmate. Another puzzle. Let us look at threats in puzzle position. Queen takes rook, check. Queen takes bishop, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Queen takes queen. The checks are. Queen takes rook, check. Queen takes bishop, check. Queen to e7, check. Queen to f8, checkmate. Queen takes pawn, check. The answer is Queen to f8, checkmate. Next puzzle, puzzle position vulnerabilities are. Queen takes pawn. The checks are. Queen to h2, checkmate. Queen to e1, check. Queen to a1, check. Here is the solution to the puzzle. Queen to h2, checkmate. One more, threats in puzzle position are. Rook takes pawn. Rook takes pawn. Queen takes pawn, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Checks in this position are. Rook to e8, check. Rook to g7, check. Queen to g7, check. Queen to f8, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Here is the solution to the puzzle. Queen takes pawn, check. King to f8. Bishop to h6, check. Bishop to g7. Queen takes bishop, checkmate. Next puzzle, threats in puzzle position are. Queen takes pawn. Here are checks in puzzle position. Rook to d1, check. Queen to f5, check. Queen to c1, check. Queen to e4, check. The best move in puzzle position is. Rook to d1, check. King to c2. Queen to c1, checkmate. Let us go to the next puzzle. Puzzle position vulnerabilities are. Rook takes pawn. Knight takes pawn. Queen takes rook. The checks are. Knight to g3, check. Solution to the puzzle is. Knight to g3, check. King to g1. Queen to e3, checkmate. Let's see the next puzzle. Threats in puzzle position are. Rook takes queen. Queen takes knight. The checks are. Queen to f3, checkmate. Rook to g1, check. Solution to the puzzle is. Queen to f3, checkmate. Let us go to the next puzzle. Here are threats in puzzle position. Queen takes rook, check. Rook takes pawn. Let us look at checks in puzzle position. Queen takes rook, check. Queen to c7, check. Queen to d6, check. Queen to b6, check. Answer to this puzzle is. Queen to d6, check. King to e8. Bishop to b5, check. Rook to c6. Bishop takes rook, checkmate. One more, threats in puzzle position are. Rook takes pawn, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Queen takes knight. King takes knight. Bishop takes pawn, check. Here are checks in puzzle position. Rook takes pawn, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Bishop takes pawn, check. The best move in puzzle position is. Queen takes pawn, check. King to f1. Queen to g2, checkmate. Next puzzle, the threats are. Rook takes knight. Rook takes pawn. Rook takes pawn. Queen takes rook. Queen takes pawn, check. Bishop takes pawn. Here are checks in puzzle position. Knight to f7, check. Queen takes pawn, check. The puzzle is solved using. Queen takes pawn, check. Pawn takes queen. Rook to h7, checkmate. Let us go to the next puzzle. Threats in puzzle position are. Rook takes pawn. Queen takes pawn. There are no checks in this position. The answer is bishop to f3. Rook to g1. Bishop takes pawn, check. Rook takes bishop. Queen takes rook, checkmate. Let us go to the next puzzle. Puzzle position vulnerabilities are: rook takes pawn. The checks are: knight to d5, check. Knight to g2, check. Rook to c3, check. Rook to e2, checkmate. The answer is rook to e2, checkmate. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.